everyone, I'm Natasha Ryan with Premier Risk Solutions, and this is our video series we do every week, Strong, Safe, and True. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Art Lesser. We're going to talk about surveillance countermeasures and his investigations. So Art, I want you to talk a little bit about your background first, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I've been in the security business for over 25 years. I'm a licensed California private investigator, but I specialize in technical surveillance countermeasures, TSCM. We don't do anything where lock and key or cameras or backgrounds or anything, just looking for clandestine devices that could compromise privacy and confidentiality. TSCM was a government acronym that was used many years ago, but I'd say now it's more known as debugging sweeps or electronic countermeasures. And that's involving looking and examining and investigating for audio or video covert electronic surveillance devices, basically designed for unauthorized radio frequencies that are transmitting out of an environment, clandestine signals, inspection of telephone wiring, telecommunication devices, low voltage wiring that runs throughout, and AC electrical wiring that runs throughout the corporate environment as well as residences, and a physical inspection to locate evidence of current activity or previous activity, surreptitious activity, an audit to protect against the loss and breach of privacy and confidentiality, as well as searching and looking for clandestine devices, but how to better protect the company to protect their privacy and confidentiality.
And Art, kind of talk to us, please, about what that audit looks like, what that would include.
Well, that involves looking into radio frequency. We have special spectrum analyzers that can search for anywhere that there's suspicious electronic radio frequency. It involves looking at the electrical wiring that runs throughout the building. Some of it's very common from one office to another office or one area to another. Sometimes you can listen in like with a baby monitor type thing from the CEO's office into the bathroom or the break rooms. And also residences are more vulnerable. So there's electrical and low voltage wiring. Physical inspection to look for something that could be implanted, tape recorder under a desk, something that could be implanted or left behind, and anywhere else where there could be a breach of privacy or confidentiality. Indeed, clean decks policy, we're there generally at 11 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, and we find many times that there are confidential documents left on the fax machine or a copy machine, etc.
We hear that a lot. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more and dive into specific devices here, because some of these I didn't even think about. Like when you talk about dormant devices, right? Like they can be placed, they have the ability to record data, audio, video. I would have never thought, Art, about office decor. What does that look like to someone that just walks in and has no clue, you know, like, oh, there's a plant. Where could those kinds of devices be hidden?
I'm sorry to say, go on Google and type spying devices and you'll get a couple of thousand pages, and some of it now has become so sophisticated. You can take a regular cable, like your cable for your data cable, and inside that connection, they can actually hide a little microphone or a transmitting devices. You look at your power supplies that are plugged into the wall. Most people don't look at those, don't know, but those devices today have become very suspect because they are large enough to get the power from either the phone system or the electrical wiring, and they could have either a radio frequency device that's transmitting turned on remote control, or it could have a tape recording device that could be on a SIM card. Very, very easy for a cleaning contractor or a general contractor to plug something in at 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, leave it in and take it out the next day. So all of those things in the environment, a plant, God, how easy it would be to hide something in the plant with a microphone going up the stems, etc. So very, very difficult. And you have to have the proper equipment today to search for the very sophisticated bugging devices that are on the market today.
Sure you do. And, you know, with the smart devices, you know, you have be aware of changing default usernames and passwords. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, many times. I'm sorry to say again, a printer comes in and it still has a default password and it's on the network. So somebody through that can get onto the network through the printer with the default password, like Panasonic might be 99999 or whatever default password easily found, and they don't change those passwords. We test for that. We also look at what wireless networks are operating, and when we see sometimes more often than we'd like, but sometimes we see open networks that are WEP1 and they're not very secure. So we look at those to see how do we better tighten up the networks to see how they're not easily compromised.
All right. Well, this is all super interesting. And you mentioned before, like the letting like a cleaner come in or come out, that could maybe be someone that's paid off to implant that device, right? Or someone posing as a cleaner. What are the challenges with securing work from home environments that you're seeing? Because this is a whole new can of worms that we keep talking about. And you gave me food for thought. Like I never thought about, oh, my cleaner could, just spend a few $100s and boop.
Well, and I'll go back. You mentioned IoT devices. There are certainly IoT devices now in the corporate environment, but they're prevalent in the home environment. And if like we've seen recently, some of the camera networks are open to the network. I think Amazon now has where you can share your Amazon with your next door neighbor. New technology for the news. I just saw it this last night on the news, where you can share your Amazon with the next door neighbor. So you have to check for these things to make sure that's not happening. But I'll go back in time to old school baby monitors, where you plugged in a baby monitor in the electrical outlet in the baby's room, and then you plugged in the living room the baby monitor that you could hear the baby cry. That was old school baby monitors. Today, a lot of that is done with radio frequency. But if you took the old school baby monitors that were pretty significant in size, and you really miniaturized them today in today's technology, and you plug that looks like a charger for your cell phone or whatever, and you plugged it into the baby's room, and now you transmit that audio over the electrical lines on a certain frequency, where very clear audio, and then you plugged it to an electrical outlet outside the house that happens to be coming to the baby or into your office environment in the room, and you can hear everything clear as day outside the house, what you're discussing, either in your office or your bedroom, whatever. So it's, and of course, the IoT device is almost the same thing, except that's wireless. It's a significant threat today. And when you talk about it, we are concerned about possibly someone who has access to the home who's making $20, $25, $50 an hour, and someone gives them $500. Hey, just plug this in and pick it up in a day or two and give it back to me. Significant threat, and I'm really concerned about that stuff. I'm a great believer there's no such thing as a free lunch. I'm really concerned about the companies that invest their millions of dollars and time in developing whatever, and then someone stealing it. So we look hard and deep for anything that could compromise, again, privacy and confidentiality. It's not just the bugging device, but where they could be not following good clean desk policy or anything else that could breach privacy and confidentiality.
So let's move on to the next concern that you're hearing a lot about. New technology comes along and the capabilities for criminals, increases, right? So let's talk about 5G and some of the, concerns we're seeing there.
When I started in the industry, and I'll just use an example if you can see my hands, the frequency on the spectrum is wide open, the radio frequency. At that time when I started, it was only this big on the spectrum, and it was analog. So you could tune in with a scanner and hear everything in analog.
Sure.
Then it went to digital, and it opened up a little bit more frequency. In digital, well, you could still download and record digital, and then through computer generation, turn it back into analog. Now there's encrypted digital, which is the way to go, and I'd welcome discussing that in another segment, because that's the way to go with digitally encrypted microphones. We still see microphones in boardrooms that are analog, meaning I could hear everything in that boardroom in the parking lot outside in clear audio. Digital, a little bit more difficult. Digital encrypted, much more difficult. But with the spread spectrum now, or with 5G, we've opened up the spectrum to this much, and it's much smaller frequency signaling because of the technology of 5G. So you have to have very specialized spectrum analyzers to search for those signals that are in a much greater area of the spectrum, and then analyze those as being suspicious, and then look into those to see, well, is it something that's normal in the environment, or is it something that could be compromising the radio frequency in the environment? And that could sometimes be remotely turned on. And I recommend very highly, we generally do much of our work after hours. We don't want to be there when the company employees are there because we don't want them to see what we're doing. And we certainly don't want to be over their backs. So we generally do much of our work after hours. But it really should be where we're doing monitoring while the meeting is taking place in a remote location, close to where the boardroom is, but we cannot hear a thing, not a word in the boardroom. We just look for a suspicious signal that may pop up when the meeting starts and stays up. Somebody in the boardroom could be calling their office. It's a 1 minute, 2 minute conversation. But if that signal comes up 2 or 3 or 5 minutes after the meeting starts and stays up, then I got to call my contact with the company, the security director, manager, whatever, and say, what do you want to do? And in some cases, when we've seen that, they've stopped the meeting and asked everybody to please take your cell phones out of the office, out of the boardroom. And that's one of the best ways to look for something that is suspicious, to have monitoring done during the meeting. And we do that very efficiently. We sometimes do it with 2 people. One person circulates around the outside of the building looking for a car that's out there with somebody sitting with headphones on. So we're very thorough with that, and we find it's one of the better ways to look for something that's suspicious and to better protect a sensitive, confidential, proprietary meeting.
You know, one of the hardest questions for a company dealing with any form of security, right, is how do we know when to outsource? How do we know when we can't handle something ourselves? So what advice would you give companies that are questioning, like, can we handle this? Can we not?
Great questions, Natasha. Thank you. You've done the research, or you understand the industry. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment and a lot of money in training for me and my people. And I've had the opportunity working in the industry, working with people from various 3-letter agencies who have, in some cases, done this work in the White House. They couldn't tell me everything of what they did, but I've learned certain techniques, and I've been doing it over a number of years. When you hire a professional TSCM contractor, you're getting someone who has a lot of experience in different companies, learning from those companies what they do and how do you now caress that and make it better for your environment. And also you have upgrades in equipment. There are times where sometimes one of my crew people are using a piece of equipment and I'm using it for several weeks. And then I'll have to use it because I'm on site that day. And I'll look at the equipment after I haven't used it after 3-4 weeks, and I have to think about it again. If you have somebody in your company that's opening up that box and using that piece of equipment once a month or once every 3 months, it's difficult. It's very difficult because the technology of the equipment, although in some cases simple, is very technical to make it work. I use an example. If I gave you a Ferrari and you didn't know how to shift, a Volkswagen is going to go right by you. Same thing with this equipment. You could have it, turn it on. If you don't know how to make it hum, you'll get the benefit of equipment. So we do training. If you have your own contractors, you may spend a lot of money in equipment. You may spend a lot of money in training. If they move, if they're not doing it on a regular basis, you're not getting anywhere near the best bang for your buck and your timing of what you're investing in these people and the investments you are making, hiring, etc. So I think unless you have somebody who's doing it and traveling and doing it on a regular basis, we have sometimes we have done 5 sweeps in a week, sometimes 2. Sometimes 2 weeks have gone by and we've done 1 or 2, but we do it on a regular, consistent basis and stay on top of our game.
All right, Art, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for watching and being with us. And of course, as always, if you need anything from us, Premier Risk, there's my name, Natasha Ryan. Feel free to reach out. Again, Art, thank you. We love to educate. We love to give takeaways. And if we can just help one person, then we've done something good with our day, right, Art?
And Natasha, thank you. And I most appreciate working with you and Premier. You're one of the more professional companies I've worked with. And it's a pleasure to work with you. And I look forward to answering any questions that you and or your clients come up with. Happy to work with you.
Perfect. Thanks, Art. And thanks, everyone. Again, premierrisksolutions.com for more videos just like this one. See ya.